let's get started. Welcome to the Utilities Against Scams webinar. This is a really exciting initiative. Very forward thinking and about getting scams and fraud on the agenda for all different organisations and businesses. So I'm really excited to be here today. Next slide, please, Fiona, or we're straight into the video. Right, perfect. So the agenda for the day is, obviously I'm going to provide some introduction. I'm going to show you a video next around scams and fraud. The video is far more exciting than listening to me wittering on around it. And then I'll provide you with some sort of about 5 minutes around some key statistics and some things that we're seeing at the moment with the cost of living crisis and consumer vulnerability going forward. And then we've got Joe, who's going to talk about what is Utilities Against Scams. And then Beth, who's going to cover off the pilot project and the community work. And then Nikki, who works within the National Scams team, will cover off the next steps. So I will start with a video. If you can't hear the sound, please put it in the chat. Any questions that you have throughout the presentations, you can either save them to the end or put them in the chat and we can answer them as we go through or answer them all at the end. Thank you very much. Fiona, cue video. That is the video that we use at the beginning of the Friends Against Scams training as well, to provide education and information on the detrimental impact that scams and fraud can have. The whole presentation today is not going to be quite as doom and gloomy and as heavy as that. You'll be pleased to hear. But we are talking about the fact that 40% of all recorded crimes at the moment is scams and fraud. So it's a massive chunk of all crime that is taking place within the UK. The issue we've got around that is that's the recorded crime. We believe that between only 5 and 15% of people actually report the fact that they've received a scam or have actually fallen victim to one. So it's massively underreported. And some of the reasons for that are the fact that there are too many different reporting mechanisms, so people don't understand where to go. But also shame is a great barrier for people to reporting the fact that they have actually responded to a scam or a fraud and sent money to a criminal. People feel wildly ashamed by this, and particularly with some of the victims we look at within the National Trading Standards Scams team, we tend to focus on people that are over 70. Those people, the shame element and the privacy element in relation to their finances is a massive barrier to them reporting or seeking help. We also know that with scam victims that sometimes the criminals will become their friends or their contact, because social isolation and loneliness can be a key factor in people responding to these sort of crimes and these sort of letters or texts, and the criminals become their friends, and it's grooming for older people. So to actually then get somebody to admit that they have been abused by one of their friends is quite a difficult thing to get people to understand and for people to accept, which is why reporting is so low. But from a positive aspect, that's why we decided to launch Friends Against Scams in 2016. And I won't go into the project too much because that's not my agenda item. But Friends Against Scams is around providing community resilience and education from grassroots to grey roots. Community resilience and consumer education is one of our biggest arms of defence against these criminals. As you would have probably seen in the news and all over the papers all of the time, the law enforcement response to scams and fraud is quite low. There's not enough resource in it, and a lot of it is international. But if we can educate people within our communities to understand when people are trying to defraud them or scam them, then actually you will build that resilience so that the criminals won't be able to infiltrate those communities. But also you're going to take away that shame element, which gets people talking about it. So Friends Against Scams is about taking away the shame and getting people talking about their own experiences, but also trying to protect their mums, their dads, their neighbours, their aunties, their uncles, whoever their children, whoever they feel that might need protecting from these criminals. So the more we talk about it, the more awareness we raise, which is where we'll come on to. Joe will talk to you about the pilot and the project that we did in relation to utilities against scams. Whilst we look at the sort of the fraud landscape and we think that 40% of all crimes, all recorded crimes is currently fraud, there's a big move from the government to actually take some more action in this space and chuck some more resource at it, which can only be a positive thing. We're also dealing with what is essentially a storm of consumer vulnerability. We've bounced sort of from one crisis to the next. So we had the pandemic, then we went into a war situation, then we've moved into a cost of living crisis and the interest rates and inflationary rises, potentially a mental health pandemic. The zombies are definitely coming next because that's the only thing that's next to come. So what we're looking at now is the latest statistics show that 53% of UK consumers are showing a characteristic of potential vulnerability, and that's either because of their situation, so people aren't vulnerable, it's their situations that cause their vulnerability, so being in debt, having low resilience to financial shock, a mental health issue, a physical health issue, any of those situations that can cause vulnerability. 53% of UK residents are showing one of those potential characteristics. So that we're talking about over 25 million people within the UK could be potentially situationally vulnerable, which means that they may not be making the best decisions and getting the best outcomes for themselves in relation to fraud and scams and or other situations. But for example, just not buying counterfeit goods online or making wise shopping purchases. So you've got all of these things in relation to situational vulnerability. Add to that you've got marketplace vulnerability. We have seen the criminals more recently jump on things like the green agenda and trying to do things like spray people's lofts with foam to insulate their houses, which actually invalidates people's mortgages. We saw that the criminals diversify far quicker than we can keep up with them, even to the point that the doorstep callers were offering driveway sanitation. Don't leave your house, there's coronavirus on your driveway, doing this and preying on older people. So we are seeing the cost of living increasing consumer vulnerability, which is why it's more important for us to be on the ball in relation to scams and fraud, to ensure that we're educating, talking about and trying to provide that resilience. And if people aren't able to protect themselves, that we're able to step in and support them to be able to do that. I'm not saying take away people's autonomy, but we need to be able to have a bit of a defence up if we can. And then understand that vulnerability, because people move in and out of consumer vulnerability, which means there could be certain pinch points in their lives where they are more susceptible to fraud and scams, which is why I'm delighted to be at this seminar today. And I'll hand over to Jo now, Jo Giles, who is from Cadent, and she's the Customer Safeguarding Senior Manager, and she's going to talk to you about what is Utilities Against Scams. Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks Lou. Thanks so much for that. And yeah, some quite worrying statistics shared there, but actually realistic figures, and I think that's something we all really need to be aware of. So in this current environment that we are living in post-pandemic, it was always a risk, but it's a much higher risk these days that scam artists are potentially using our company IDs, our trusted reputation and branding to use that against our customers and scam them out of their money. So there's lots of work to be done, and as it clearly says on here, Utilities Against Scams is very much about us taking a stand together to ensure that we make certain we spot, we stop and we prevent scams from happening. But the way that this came around really is linked also within the fact that as part of my role at Cadent, I'm also part of the National Mental Capacity Forum Leadership Group. If I refer to that again, I will shorten it to the acronym of NMCF, just to let you know. But as that leadership group, I represent utilities. So I'm there trying to represent all of you. And please do make certain that if you're interested in what I'm about to share, do feel free to contact me if you're not already in contact. As part of this NMCF leadership group, it's about embedding the Mental Capacity Act in our day-to-day processes and in different ways. So that means that I then have a utility working group that helps support that utility approach. And it was through the utility working group that we published Utilities Against Scams. So as much as we have that utility working group, when we did the launch of this particular priority, I remember there was a question in the audience asking us, so now you've published this and you're going to go on to your next priority, what happens? Does the book and the details get put on a bookshelf and get dusty? Well, the answer is no. This is about having advice and support to companies to ensure that we can have a consistent approach and practical steps and keeping that alive. And that's what today is about, really. We did, when we launched this, the world is a very different place. But ultimately, this is not a relaunch. This is a refocus to ensure that all of those companies that were part of this first time around and have signed up with their commitments, that we can again look at some good practice and understand how we can make further progress with Utilities Against Scams to help support our customers and the communities that we work in. Let me tell you a little bit about the launch. So actually, some of you might have been there. And if you were, you would have experienced a fantastic day. We held the launch. You see it face to face, pre-pandemic. It was the old usual. It was a great event. We held it at the Royal College of Nursing in London. We had a really great turnout from across utilities. And also some other interested parties as well. And it's always really important for those partnerships to ensure that we're including people in the work that we're doing, because actually for us, there's always an issue about actually being able to reach those customers that we want to support, and we need to do that through partnerships. You'll see there's an array of photographs, just a few of my favourites of the day, but actually let me draw into a few of them. So photograph number 3 here. This is Baroness Finlay. So Baroness Finlay was the lead of the NMCF leadership group. She was charged by the House of Lords to embed the Mental Capacity Act across the UK. And she was always so impressed about the utility approach to this. We'd previously launched dementia-friendly utilities. Our next launch, actually, which will be post-Christmas, is going to be mental health and affordability, so watch out for that one. But utilities against scams really close to Baroness Finlay's heart, because actually, with the Mental Capacity Act, fluctuating capacity, people can make bad decisions. But actually, in this case, it's so easily done when you've got scam artists who are professionals. And I think that's really key here. Lou mentioned it before, it was in the film. This is not just about somebody, deciding to, try something. This is on a grand scale. You'll also spot as well, image number 5 here, a gentleman, and anybody who was in the audience might remember Barry Atkins. He was so brave. He came into this event and he stood up on the podium with us, and he presented the fact that he was actually a scam victim. He wasn't just a scam victim once, he was a scam victim multiple times, and he told his story and the impacts that it had upon him, because actually also the scam involved his family. So i.e. he was the victim of a family scam. It really was just, when you looked around the room when Barry was telling his story, you just were so, sort of in awe of the fact that he was willing to stand up, face that stigma. And it's that we really need to ensure that we take a stand against, and talk about this stuff, which is why today is really important. And I hope that every single one of you on this call will take extra steps and new steps to make certain that we do take that stand, just as Barry was brave enough to do so on that day. Other pictures here as well, you'll see that in picture number 6, there's an image of a little bit of the giveaways that we did on the day. So I will be talking about the toolkit in a second that we've created. But ultimately, it was you all went away with a goodie bag, and within that goodie bag, there were multiple things, from the actual guidance through to things like a telephone notepad, as this shows. But the idea with this telephone notepad, it's there for you to help support your customers by on every page reminding them that actually they won't get phone calls from us, pressurising them for monies. Most certainly they won't get a phone call saying, if you don't pay £3,000 today, we'll cut your gas off. Those things happen and people believe it because our branding is used. Really effective day, and from this I know that National Trading Standards were contacted by many companies, and many of you have signed up for Utilities Against Scams. However, this was back pre-pandemic and a lot has happened. So there are new people in positions who maybe weren't part of this. There are people who, maybe, sort of didn't get the chance that they wanted to because March 2020 happened, and ultimately still really keen to be involved. So, your chance is not up because you weren't at that event. Let me tell you some more. So today, as I say, it's a refocus, it's a call to action. It's to ask all of you on this call, to not just yourself, but people you know as well within the industry, to make certain that they are aware of the work of Utilities Against Scams. It's not just a call to action, however, we also provide the tools to support you to do this. And that is based in the Utilities Against Scams toolkit, which is available and free. Now, a little bit later on, Nikki will be talking about how you can gain access to this. So I won't blow anything that she's going to say there, but I will tell you some of the things that are included in the toolkit. So yes, there is the guidance document, and I've got it here as well. There's very much an approach that means we're looking to support not only how we as companies can support and raise awareness of customers, but also colleagues and also ourselves as companies. What do we do when we receive a phone call from a customer saying that they've just received an email or a letter with our branding on, but it isn't actually from us and it's asking for money? We know if one person has that, thousands of people will have that letter and could actually believe it and act upon it. So we need to take a stand. There are case studies in the publication and lots of information and guidance for you. So please do, when Nikki provides the details, go and download that brochure and have a good read. But continue to thumb through it in weeks to come because there's so much there that you can learn. The other thing is there is some training. Now, this was developed specifically for utilities, was based on Friends Against Scams, but it's got some utility examples. So I spoke earlier about spotting, stopping and preventing. This helps colleagues to recognise maybe if a scam is happening. It could be that over the telephone, as I say, a customer notifies us they've received a letter, which actually isn't from us. It can also be when we're entering into people's homes that we spot something or a customer tells us something that sets off the alarm bells. And also the toolkits tells you about what you actually need to do if you see or recognise a scam. In addition to that, there are also some giveaways which are UAS branded, but actually I say they're Utilities Against Scams branded. Importantly, that is the only branding on there. Now, as a company, you can either, like we do in my business, and I know many members of the utility working group that I chair, it's about Utilities Against Scams. So we don't necessarily add additional branding on there, but you can. So within the toolkit, there are PDFs ready for you to utilise, to talk to your printers, to talk to your colleagues about printing these things off, using the content in there from roller banners to social media comments to ensure that actually we're taking a consistent approach. And you can add your own branding on there. So actually, if you are sharing things such as the telephone notepad, you can put your own branding on so your customers recognise and trust it's from you and therefore know what they should do when they are potentially targeted by scammers. All of this stuff is really, really important and it's there for you to use. So please do make certain that you sign up and continue to use these items. So it comes for me to sort of wrap up my session now and say thank you for listening to me. We're going to sort of come next. We're going to hear about some good practice happening in the community in a second, and that will then also lead on to how you officially can get involved again within the Utilities Against Scams. I would like to just make certain that everybody on here is aware, as the presentation said at the very beginning, this can happen to anybody. It can happen multiple times. It can mean that our company identity and branding is used in ways that are never intended by us as businesses. So please do make certain that you are thinking about your colleagues and how you can train them and make certain they're confident on what to do if they spot a scam or consider it could be a scam. Likewise, raising awareness within your customer base that this stuff happens. Really important. And this is in every process. If you think about how your processes are happening within the community, then actually making some small adaptations can make all the difference. The other thing is then around your company. What can you do to make certain that not only are your customers aware that your company would never, phone up and ask for money or knock on the door and say, "Hi, we're from the gas board. We're just coming in to check X," without an appointment. These things are really important. And it's all about understanding the different touch points of scams, from telephone through to letter and email and distraction burglaries on the doorstep. On that note, I'm going to wrap up and I'm going to hand over to Beth Kennedy from Anglian Water, who's going to talk about the project based in the community. Beth, thank you very much. Over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Jo. So hi everyone, there's some familiar names on the call, but for those who don't know me, my name is Beth. I'm the Customer Services Partnership Manager at Anglian Water. It's really great to be here today, and I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes or so talking through our journey with Utilities Against Scams and give you a little bit of information about some of the work that we've done in the community to help prevent our customers in the most vulnerable of circumstances falling victim to scams. So it all started through the NMCF working group that Joe mentioned earlier. And we're a part of that group in back end of 2019, together with the help of National Trading Standards Scams team, we launched Utilities Against Scams. Now, to me, Utilities Against Scams is a way of all utility companies working together, adopting a consistent approach when it comes to raising awareness of scams to support our customers and our colleagues. I'm sure many of you can relate to hearing about a customer having fallen victim to a bogus caller or a distraction burglary. And unfortunately, as Joe mentioned, criminals often use utility companies' reputable names to gain access into our customers' homes. And being a water company, the most common for us is where bogus callers claim to be from the water board, which hasn't existed for many years. But sadly, there are some of our older customers who still see us as just that, the water board. As utility companies, we're in a really privileged position of being able to engage with our customers through various different channels, including home visits. And for us at Anglian Water, we visit roughly 76,000 customers every year. And that in itself presents us with an opportunity to deliver those personalised messages of scam prevention directly to our customers during those interactions. The Utilities Against Scams training equips our colleagues with the knowledge of scams and helps provide information on what to look out for to help them identify that a scam may be taking place. And with that in mind, we really wanted to see if we could take that knowledge from the training and bring the Utilities Against Scams messaging in at a hyper-local level directly to our customers and see if we could really support in that fight against scams and fraud. And like you all here, we wanted to be able to support as many customers as possible. And one of the ways to reach more of our customers is by working in partnership, really working together. And I think it's safe to say that's a key message to take away from today. A big part of today is all about collaboration. And working together, we've been led by the National Trading Scams team to make sure we're doing the right thing. And we've linked up with colleagues across the energy sector. In this instance, we worked with Cadent Gas to run a pilot project across Lincolnshire, bringing the message of Utilities Against Scams into the heart of the community. And with the support of Lincolnshire Trading Standards, we was able to assess the benefit. So I'm going to go on to talk about what the aim of that pilot project was. In short, we wanted to see if we could help prevent customers falling victim of scams, but also educate those who have already been scammed on where to go for support. For this to happen, we trained up our engineers on the front line, those who engage with our customers face to face. And the training provided by the National Trading Standards Scams team, including all of those great bits that Joe mentioned earlier about educating our teams on the different types of scams and giving information on how to help spot the signs of somebody who may be falling victim to scam. And the aim was really to educate and instill confidence in our colleagues to be able to have that conversation and leave information about scams with our customers directly. The focus on the project was all about delivery of that scam messaging directed to our customers in the most vulnerable circumstances. For example, it might be our older customers, maybe who are more isolated, more susceptible to scams, but also helping our engineers to proactively identify the signs that a scam may be taking place to ensure that the message was reaching those who need it most. We launched a project in the Lincolnshire area because we wanted to follow on from, there was some previous successful pilot partnerships within Lincolnshire as part of the multi-agency approach to fraud. And essentially what that did is bring together the local authority trading standards, police and other organisations to work together on scams in the area. And it's also an area that both us at Anglian Water and Cadent Gas fund the vital project Operation Repeat, which is all about scam prevention, and it trains up the health and social care sector staff to deliver those messages of scam awareness to the most vulnerable in our community. So you'll see the bottom right, in essence, the model that we used was train up our engineers in Lincolnshire with the most exposure to customers in their homes. Our colleagues would deliver those scam messages directly to our customers, leaving leaflets with them to read over. Then as a consequence, the customers who have been victim of scams know where to go to seek support. So in this instance, to speak with their local citizens' advice. And the hope was that by giving customers that proactive scam prevention information, fewer customers would fall victim of scams. I just wanted to take a minute here to share what the collateral produced for this pilot project looked like. And here's a trifold leaflet. Within it, what we tried to do is maximise the opportunity to deliver some of those key scam prevention messages, as well as the reporting messages, so that even after the visit has happened, the customer has access to that information. Going back to what Lou mentioned right in her intro, only 5 to 15% of scams get reported. And as part of this project, we didn't only want to help prevent a scam occurring in the first place, but where unfortunately a customer has already fallen for a scam, we want to make sure that they know where to go to seek that extra support and where they can ask for some help. And that's why we provided information on the different types of scams, as well as spotting the signs that a scam could be happening. And really interestingly, a piece of feedback that we received on this is how useful it was to have those practical tips on the leaflet, including how they can sign up to our priority services registers, with emphasis on that password scheme to help add that extra layer of protection onto their account. And this trifold leaflet is now accessible to other Utilities Against Scams organisations through the toolkit. So should you wish to have your own printed and roll this out in your own organisation, you can have access to that. So I hope you'll agree that the aspiration for this project sounded great in principle, but what I want to do now is talk you through some of what we were able to achieve together and how we were able to make a real difference across the county. And to be able to really quantify it, we worked very closely with Lincolnshire Trading Standards throughout the pilot period. And they were able to report a phenomenal 69% increase in scams being reported before and after the project took place. So in essence, more of our customers who had fallen victim to scams had actually reached out to ask for that support. And as I mentioned before, you can't take away from the fact that Lincolnshire as a county is incredibly proactive when it comes to the scam prevention work. But I think for us, it's fantastic that we were able to be part of a project that had such positive work directly in the community, and we was able to quantify that success. And between us at Anglian Water and Cadent Gas, we cover half the homes in the UK. But for the purpose of the Lincolnshire project, we wanted to really assess the benefit. So we did it on a small scale, and we printed 5,000 leaflets for our frontline teams to be able to hand out to customers. Now, with that in mind, National Trading Standards Scams team have been able to estimate that delivering those scam prevention messages to 5,000 customers would equate to roughly £295,000 worth of savings. And that's based on each scam prevention conversation saving roughly £59, which is just brilliant. And we know that to be the most effective in our fight against the growing global issue that is scams and fraud, collaboration is essential. And this pilot was a real example of how that looks in practice. And on behalf of all the organisations involved, we're genuinely incredibly proud to be working together to tackle a growing problem head on. And it's through raising awareness of scams and fraud that we will all be able to help keep more people safe. So that draws an end to my time with you today. But I hope that you've enjoyed hearing about how we implemented Utilities Against Scams through the project and how the pilot has had a positive effect on many of our customers and the community of Lincolnshire. And it may be that you'd like to explore a similar initiative in your own organisation. And I'd welcome any questions that you may have on how to get it up and running yourself. But thank you so much for listening. I'm going to hand over to Nikki now, who's going to be able to talk through the next steps and how you can all get involved. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Beth. My name is Nikki Pasek, and I am the Friends Against Scams lead for the National Trading Standards Scams team. And so what I'm going to do is just take you through a couple of slides and talk about obviously what we've seen today, and looking at how we can encourage you and to get your support and what you can do to join in. If I can have the next slide, Fiona, please. Thank you. Okay, so as you've seen from the presentations today, the people targeted by scams are often in the most vulnerable circumstances, and the impact on their lives is devastating. From large financial losses to severe emotional damage, which leaves victims feeling intimidated, scared, and afraid to be in their own homes. The fact that criminals take advantage of any situation it saddens me deeply, but unfortunately, having spent my career in trading standards, working to protect and support local communities, it's something that I've seen across the board. So when I joined, I had the opportunity to join the National Trading Standards Scams team. I jumped at the chance because actually it was about making a sustainable difference. So we created the Friends Against Scams project, or the initiative, and it was really our aim to create a social movement against scams. The team knew if we truly wanted to bring about long-term change to scam prevention, that is so desperately needed to protect our communities, we had to bring together a whole range of partners, which included businesses, the public sector, voluntary organisations, and local communities. So you'll see that counter on our screen. If you visit our website, you'll see various different counters. But that counter on our screen that we have from our website shows that we have so far brought over 300 different organisations together to work together and support this. So in terms of bringing utility companies together with these other organisations, it is absolutely essential to us. And the reason, it was touched on earlier, but the reason for us is that utility companies are in a unique position. As your customer-facing staff might be the only people that speak to a consumer either that day, that week, or that month. So you can actually reach people that some of our other partners just can't reach. You play an absolutely crucial role in helping us to spot customers that might have been scammed and need support. So I'm going to move on to talking about the benefits of joining Utilities Against Scams. So there's a whole range of benefits, and again, you've heard on them today, and you've heard it, straight from some of the utility companies, which I'm sure is obviously, helps to demonstrate the impact and the usefulness that this work has had for them. But basically, Utilities Against Scams can provide your company with a simple and effective ready-made solution to help you improve scams awareness and prevention, and not only with your customers, but also with your staff as well. It gives you an opportunity to have a positive effect on the lives of your customers. You can help empower your customers by providing them with information about how they can protect themselves. You can also collaborate with the wide range of partners that we already have, and who all of those partners, you've heard it said today, but all of those partners are working towards the same goal, and that is taking a stand against scams, and you can join that collaboration. By joining our collaboration, it enables you to share best practice, increase your networks, and as you've seen from the example from Beth today, get involved in local projects that really make a difference in the communities that you work with. So I would hope after attending our session today, we've demonstrated the importance of your company signing up and joining Utilities Against Scams. What I would say for you, as Joe spoke about, is we did launch this, and then unfortunately the world changed significantly. So there may be some of you on this call that joined Utilities Against Scams originally and didn't actually get round to doing scam prevention work, and that's absolutely fine. Please come back to us and please contact us. But for anybody who hasn't already joined Utilities Against Scams, the good news is it's very simple for you to do. So the first thing that we ask you to do is to make a pledge. A pledge is basically a very simple commitment from your company to let us know the work that you plan to do. So that could range from training your staff internally, training your customers, working with your customers, sending messages out maybe on bills, but something that you are going to commit to do. Now that can be something small to start with, and you can then have a plan to increase that in the future. Anything that you are prepared to pledge and support with your company, we would welcome. Our team, myself and Fiona, who's also on this call, is doing a great job sorting out our slides for us. We are happy to talk to you about this area. So, you know, if you've got some ideas but you're not sure, just give us a call or give us a contact, and we will help you develop your pledge. So once you've made the pledge, you will then get access to a range of information that will enable you to train your staff. The first thing is train your staff. So as you heard earlier, we have ready-made Utilities Against Scams training that was developed in partnership with the founding members of Utilities Against Scams, that is specifically aimed at utility company staff. This training has been developed as a PowerPoint and can be shared with you, and is free for you to use within your company. If you have a lot of people to train and you can get them together, as we have, you know, on a session like today, then again, myself and Fiona would be happy to come in and run some sessions for you as well online. Then the final part of really that Utilities Against Scams that we would ask you to do once you've done your pledge, you've trained your staff, is to do the promotional work. So as you've heard from Joe earlier, we have a Utilities Against Scams toolkit, and that was developed again with utility partners. So it contains information that your utility colleagues thought would be of use. So once you become a Utilities Against Scams organisation, you are able to access all of those materials. Those materials can be used and tailored by you to meet your company needs. And they include not only the toolkit that Joe was talking about, but also things like promotional materials, pull-ups, social media posts, all of that you can simply just pick up and use without having to recreate your own materials. So thank you very much for your time today. And obviously, I really hope that we have encouraged you to join Utilities Against Scams. You can see the details on the screen there. What we would ask you to do is to visit our website on that link, and it enables you to register